We continue to watch multiple areas out in the Atlantic for tropical development over the next couple weeks. One of these areas will most likely become Tropical Storm Jerry very soon, and I'm talking maybe the next 1 to 2 days or so, maybe even sooner. The other area is a low pressure that could become quite strong, but maybe not be tropical in nature, sort of a hybrid system, maybe more so a nor'easter than anything, but regardless could bring similar impacts that a tropical system would normally bring. So we're going to get very detailed on that. And this is very close to us, over the next couple days, this weekend. So significant impacts is possible off that system for certain areas. So we'll get very detailed on that. The other region we are watching is the Caribbean as we move over the next 7 to 10 days or so. And we'll speak on that as we go. After that, we'll go over today's forecast across the entire lower 48, and then we'll round off the video. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. Let's make sure this is going to work. And it is. So here is a very, very healthy tropical wave dubbed Invest 95L right now. But if you told me that this was a tropical storm already, just based off the look on satellite, I would say, hey, yeah, I'll believe you. It is very, very healthy. I've seen hurricanes look like this before. So we're waking up to a very, very healthy looking tropical wave right in the middle of what we call the MDR. Might be our last tropical wave out here of the hurricane season, as this area of the Atlantic really begins to shut down as we get into October. But I really could see this becoming a tropical depression by the time some of you folks watch this video, maybe even Tropical Storm Jerry, which is the next named storm. A couple other areas we're watching is this region right here. There's actually a 10% chance for something tropical to develop out of this big blowup of convection over the Yucatan Peninsula and just areas of Mexico and Central America, but we're not expecting this to develop, but a very low chance at it. So do want to mention. And then there's nothing going on right now, but you got a big cold front digging down. It's going to tap into some energy. We kind of have a very strong low pressure that develops somewhere into here. And where does it develop after? Where does it go after it develops? Does it sort of right up the eastern seaboard like a classic nor'easter does, or does it sort of just drift around and do something weird? And listen, some models do show that. More and more model guidance is showing that scenario. So we got a lot to cover in this video. It's going to be a long video, but efficient video. We're going to cover everything. So I do want to start off by taking a closer look at Invest 95L. Like I said, by the time some of you folks watch this video, this could very well be a tropical depression, maybe even tropical storm, but it is doing fantastic. It's doing great, very healthy, and you can see a nice cyclonic flow with the lower level cloud structure and just the flow of it, and it's just a very healthy system. Now, just because it looks very healthy doesn't mean that's kind of reflected to what's actually under the hood. So what's actually going on? Is it truly a strong system? It looks like. It has that classic kind of precursor look to a developing tropical cyclone, and it very well could be this morning. And I would argue that it most likely is just based off this look. But a classic blowup of convection right over some sort of low-level circulation that's probably up under here somewhere. But we're not going to stay on this very long. But, you can see the northern sections of South America here. Lesser Antilles not showing up on the map yet, but it's still kind of, I would say, tucked into the middle of the MDR. But I just want to show you a closer look at that. Right now, as of around the 1:32 a.m. update from overnight last night, over the last several hours, I'll have another update here in the next hour or so. And who knows, they might make this a tropical depression, but it has a 90% chance to develop, and that is Invest 95L, what I just showed you a closer look at. Has a 90% chance to develop between now and the next 7 days, but listen, it'll develop sooner. In fact, if you look at the 2-day graphic, has an 80% chance to develop in the next 48 hours or so. Now, there is an area, and I circled that area right at the beginning of the video, has a 10% chance to develop into something, maybe a depression. But the chances of this developing are quite low, sort of just an area of disturbed weather. Now let's go over all model guys. Now we're going to cover a lot of pieces in this part. So luckily we can kind of zoom into one area and don't have to toggle through too many graphics until we break down that nor'easter, while I'll take a potential nor'easter when we take a closer look at the southeast. But we're going to start this off for tomorrow evening. So listen, I'm going to tell you right at the dot, just based off what Invest 95L soon-to-be tropical depression looks like right now, the GFS might take a big win in model guidance with this system. When the Euro AI model just kind of kept this week, and it's still keeping this week. And this thing might end up struggling, even though it looks impressive right now. But we start off tomorrow evening. We got a low pressure right here. That is what Invest 95L-ish, that's what the Euro thinks it'll look like tomorrow evening. So we continue to move this forward, and we get into, say, Thursday afternoon. Now you're starting to see a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity building right here. That is some sort of lower pressure developing. At the same time, you got what most likely be Jerry, and I still think the Euro is underdoing this. And luckily, it gets well northeast of the Leeward Islands. Doesn't get close. Doesn't mean that's a forecast. But as we are moving into Friday afternoon, it's like deja vu, right? You know, you had Umberto and Imelda kind of right beside each other. Once again, we got two systems right beside each other. We got a low pressure developing right here, a big slug of moisture to the north. And then we have what will most likely be Jerry right here. Now, some people are going to ask, could this be Karen, which is our next name after Jerry? It could be. It's not set in stone that this won't be that this will be completely void of tropical characteristics, but there's going to be so much dry air around with this system, it's going to be hard to call this a tropical system. So you continue to move forward here. We got just a weak tropical system being depicted off the Euro, but like I said, I think this will be stronger. And then you got that coastal low right here. And we're going to take a closer look at that here in a second. And then we're going to stop it right. We're going to continue to move. We get into Sunday. We get into Monday. And look at this low pressure just parking itself right off the coastline of North Carolina, the Carolinas, the Outer Banks, bringing a persistent onshore flow that could bring significant impacts along the North Carolina coastline, specifically the Outer Banks. And then look what the Euro does. It takes it back southwest and then plows it into Georgia and South Carolina. It's kind of a depleted system. Now, if we keep this going here, what does the Euro do? And any kind of activity down the Caribbean, which is an area I said we need to watch. Kind of gets an area of energy, throws it into the Gulf, and slings some moisture up into the Gulf and maybe the Gulf coastline. And anything else after that? Not really. Nothing really showing up. But I do want to take a closer look at this coastal low. Look at all this moisture right here. This is getting into Friday morning, October the 10th, here in the next few days or so. Man, I'm telling you, listen, there's going to be a huge cyclonic low pressure spin. So you're going to have a flow going like this. So this is going to be bringing a pretty stout onshore flow right into the southeast coastline, whether it's Georgia, northeast Florida, up into the Carolinas. I mean, we'll even get some flow going up against the southeast and just up into the southeast Virginia coastline. But whether or not you're getting heavy flooding rains or not, just a surge of wind will be slamming the coastline this weekend. And how far inland will this rain shield get? You know, we get into Saturday morning, October the 11th, strong low pressure off the coastline. The moisture is close enough to say the Outer Banks and just a little bit further inland to hit these sections of eastern North Carolina, even up to Virginia Beach. And it's just slamming all the way into Saturday, into Sunday. It's continuing. We're getting into Monday. You just got a spinning sub 1,000 millibar low pressure right off the coastline. And even though you're looking at this and thinking, well, it's not making impact, we should be good. Listen, Imelda didn't make impact, and it brought significant beach erosion to areas of the Outer Banks. So with this deep of a low pressure this close, I mean, this is going to bring impacts. Now, this is not a forecast, but I'm almost confident to say that Mitch is saying that there is a forecasted low pressure off the coast of the southeast. It's just, hey, how close is it going to be? Is it going to do what this crazy run of the Euro is doing that might not be so crazy? Because there is a strong high pressure up into the northeast, kind of helping it sort of keep the track from going up the coastline. But, you know, we get literally a week from today, next Tuesday, and it gets this low, what's ever left over of this low pressure, and then moves into Savannah, Beaufort. So a weird, crazy run, right? Now we look at the GFS. GFS, I think, is doing a better job handling Invest 95L. Now, let's hope that in future Jerry, let's hope that the model guidance continues and keeps this away from the northern Leeward Islands. If anybody needs to worry about future Jerry, it's the northern Leeward Islands. Now, on the GFS, you got a pretty strong Category 1 or 2 hurricane just northeast of you guys. But it does get north and looks to turn north fast enough and then northeast to sort of avoid Bermuda too, which we need to watch out for, which is right here. And at the same time, here's the low pressure developing off the GFS. Huge low pressure. And on the GFS, and we're going to take a closer look at it here in a second, it slings a lot of moisture inland. We're going to take a closer look. We can say bye to Jerry, okay, at this point, hopefully. It starts to book it east before it brings any impacts or gets close enough to Bermuda, and then we continue. Look what the GFS does with that low pressure, kind of like what the Euro does. You think Euro's crazy, right? Well, maybe not so much. It takes the low pressure and does this number right here, develops it right in here, and then is doing like this. It's getting bogged down by high pressure, I think, to the north. And just sort of spins around, and at this point it's just kind of depleted of any kind of moisture. Now, we only go about 10 days out. Not much is showing down here. You know, you look at the run from overnight last night. Did it show anything? It shows a lot of moisture bubbling up. Man, look at that 540 line diving all the way down to the deep south. That's crazy. There is some things we need to figure out in the long range across the lower 48 too, but we're not going to get deep into that until Model Guides begins to lock into something. Here's a closer look at this coastal low. Here it is spinning around. And look at that. Look at the GFS. I mean, this is late Saturday, this Saturday night, not next Saturday night, this Saturday night, but this weekend. And it's throwing some heavy moisture into the eastern sections of North Carolina, Northeast, South Carolina, all the way up into Southeast Virginia. And it spins around. Whether it makes a landfall, who knows? But it just is spinning around, and yeah, just a wacky run. But I mean, this is this weekend, guys. Look at this thing building here. And this would bring significant beach erosion. Heck, even some storm surge, strong gusty winds, heavy rainfall. Now the Euro AI model, what does it show? It continues to just be stubborn with Invest 95L. Who knows? Maybe it's right. Maybe the system doesn't get any stronger than what it is right now, but does take, you know, just an area of tropical rains and storms into the Leeward Islands, but nothing too crazy. And there it is, developing that low pressure right here, bringing significant impacts to the Outer Banks and eastern sections of North Carolina. 997 low. Yeah, you don't want to see that, and it sort of bogs it down just like the Euro does in the GFS, spins it around in place, and then finally it weakens completely. And there's a lot of moisture kind of hanging out down here in the Caribbean. There's a little gnat that's attracted to my light above my head. This is spinning around, annoying me. But at the very end of the run, it does show some sort of lower pressure developing down here. But, you know, just taking a closer look at the Euro AI model with this coastal low pressure, and I mean, that's just not a good look for the eastern sections of North Carolina, even into the tidewater. Now with this flow, it actually try to be pulling water. It would, you know, kind of be pulling water like this, and but it's always tough. You just got to figure out exactly where that low pressure is. But this could cause significant impacts along areas of the coastline. Now, I know some folks are like, well, what about the Northeast? Well, I would say stay on guard, but the trends have been for this low pressure to hang out south rather than north. So if you look at the Euro Ensemble guidance, you're going to see a few signals here. You're going to see three, okay? One is that the Euro Ensembles have gotten a lot more aggressive with developing Invest 95L after really dropping off. Now, most of the members do get this north, but if you look right into here, some of these members are very close to the Leeward Islands, British Virgin Islands, even Puerto Rico, so we got to watch. Okay, and then most of them begin to turn. There is a signal sneaking up at the bottom of the screen. We're going to ignore that for now. And then there's a signal for that strong low pressure developing off the coast of the Mid-Atlantic or Southeast. And you can see how crazy these members get. They sort of just flatten out and kind of start going everywhere and stuff like that. And then if I go all the way to the end of the run, you start to see some mayhem down here in the Caribbean, the Western Caribbean, with a lot of members starting to show up. But I just want to take a closer look at this coastal low signal and how wild it looks. Let's see. Weather Nerds was having some issues this morning, so hopefully it's good. But you can see these members developing, and the screen has to load, so I'm sorry. It keeps saying, please wait. But you can see how all these members are just kind of going everywhere. You see they're just dancing all around. They don't know which way to go. So it kind of supports what the operational run is showing, right? with just the confusion of where this actual low pressure will go. And I like looking at this rather than this and this. Not that. That's what just happened. Come on, man. We were rolling here. Oh, there we go. Or this. I like this look better. It shows the L's on the screen here. And this is getting into Saturday evening. That's a clear signal for a low pressure developing. Now, please don't think there's a million low pressures off the coast of the eastern U.S. This is an ensemble run, throws all the members on the output for us. But you can notice there's not a lot of members getting up close to like southern New England anymore. So it's not like that true nor'easter type track. Instead, they all kind of get bogged down by high pressure. So, and then we take a closer look down here. We go kind of past 240 hours out, right? You know, the signal is not as strong as it was a couple days ago. So can we somehow just shut out the Gulf and the Caribbean this hurricane season? Man, if you asked me three days ago, I would say absolutely not. I think something's going to happen. And I still think something's going to sneak up down here. But, you know, confidence is a lot more fuzzy. So what about impacts with this coastal low? You kind of starting south and going north. Well, this is rainfall predicted from the Weather Prediction Center between now and the next week, right? And you can tell most of the rainfall off the coastline, and this stuff that you're seeing in Florida, more so just typical tropical rains. But you get up here and you get into like the Grand Strand, that's when they're calling for a little bit more rain, and we're going to take it up there. And here's eastern North Carolina, you know, as much as 5 inches of rain. The Outer Banks, you know, several inches of rain, and Charleston up to Myrtle Beach, 1 to 3 inches of rain. And certainly need to watch what happens when any kind of slugs of moisture all the way up into the mid-Atlantic and southern New England. But just a closer look at North Carolina. Hopefully my head ain't in the way. But, you know, anywhere from 3 to 7 inches of rain is being forecasted right now. And yes, I did say forecast. And I'm big on, you know, being careful with saying forecast right now. Because, man, people are just taking everything so literal right now. You know, they see a graphic. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. You can't tell them any different. But anyways, starting off Friday morning, and I'm going to kind of roll through the entirety of the run. Now, I'm going to say this right now. This is not a forecast. This is still model runs. We still have not. Wind speeds are incredibly tough to figure out, guys, until we lock in a storm track. And we have definitely not locked in this storm track. So we look at the Euro, right? And this is starting off Friday morning. You can already see a persistent onshore flow developing right up against the Carolina coastline, Georgia coastline. Strong winds. And then we start to get through the track of this system. And it looks like, you know, big time winds, you know, across eastern sections of North Carolina, all up into the Tidewater, some gusty winds, 30 to as much as 40, 50, 60 mile per hour wind gusts, not sustained wind gusts. I mean, just off the Outer Banks, I mean, you got winds pushing over 70 mile per hour winds as far as gusts. But then watch as the low pressure sort of goes back into the Carolinas. You get some sporadic, strong wind gusts even further inland as we are getting into next week. So an interesting scenario, right? And then you look at the GFS, which we should have the entirety of the run. Same thing, as the system is kind of developing off the southeast coastline, persistent onshore flow, and then we move into the track of the system. And so even some strong winds showing up further inland, like close to Raleigh, into the PD of South Carolina, and not as high-end winds, but definitely some stronger winds here. You can see 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts, occasionally some 60 mile per hour wind gusts in the areas of the Outer Banks. So, you know, and not to ignore my folks up the Mid-Atlantic and southern New England coastline, but, you know, the track is definitely shifted south. Model guidance has, and we still need to watch sort of the Tidewater coastline and into the Delmarva, you know, Delaware, Maryland. Some strong winds are possible, especially if this gets north, pretty far north before maybe sinking south, or maybe it just climbs up the coastline. But watch out Jersey Shore. Some strong wind gusts are possible with this, but we got to lock this in. We got to figure it out. And then the New England coastline, some strong winds are possible. But if this low pressure could escape north, you know, we could start to see some crazy wind gusts being depicted by some of these model runs again. And then looking at the GFS, it actually gives you guys some stronger wind gusts up the Mid-Atlantic and southern New England coastline. Stronger winds showing up with this in Long Island. And, you know, some 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts, Jersey Shore. Not a forecast. No, this is a forecast. We're still figuring this one out. But yeah, guys. So, but, appreciate all the feedback in the comments when breaking down the tropics. Listen, it's been a tough one, because been shown we've had a lot of systems that look like they were going to get very close, and then they go out to sea, and a lot of people are just not taking stuff like this serious now because of it. So it is up to a degree. It's up to you guys, the audience, on how you take in the information, but at the same time, more of it falls back on us. How do we relay the information? And the only thing I can do is continuously say this is not a forecast. And then when we start to show you the actual forecast from the National Weather Service, from the Storm Prediction Center, then we can officially start to say, okay, this is a forecast now. But we're still in that range where we're going over model guidance. And I saw one comment yesterday was just like, just pretty much tell me what's going to happen. I'm going to the North Carolina coastline tomorrow, and you just seem to be everywhere. Basically just tell me what's going to happen. Guys, if you watch these weather videos, and that's your only mindset on this, I don't know, man. You're probably not watching them the right way, because I can't speak for everybody, until I really start to say, man, this is a forecast for right now. It's not a forecast. And I'm not guys, a lot of people think that I'm an actual meteorologist. I'm not. I don't have a degree. And I'll completely admit that. I'm not going to lie to anybody. But, until the National Weather Service starts to forecast stuff, or if I'm confident enough in something to call it a forecast, then it's just not a forecast. So just remember that. We're still trying to figure this low pressure out. Okay? So I'm going to stop doing that. That's the second video in a row where I've kind of went on my soapbox there. But this is today's forecast. A lot of rain moving across the central to really eastern portion of the country. A flood threat will be there across areas of the Mid-South and the Ohio Valley. But we kind of got two areas of rain. We got a strong cold front moving across the country. So if you're in the eastern U.S., kind of east of the Appalachian Mountains, you're sick of the warmth, don't worry. Glory is coming. But as far as watches, warnings, and advisories, freeze warnings up here. So the changing of the seasons is well underway. These are freeze warnings in the purple. Outside of that, not a big deal. Watches, as far as severe weather chances, the light green is a general risk of thunderstorms. That dark green, there is a risk of some severe weather in New Mexico. And then that flash flooding threat. Watch out in New Mexico, but really watch out in this area, guys. From Nashville up to Louisville, Lexington, Owensboro, all the way up into almost the entire state of Kentucky. Cincinnati included into this, up into Charleston, West Virginia, Wheeling. You got a 15% risk of flash flooding occurring within 25 miles in a given location in these areas. So just be aware. Definitely a flooding threat will be there for today. And then looking in the southeast on how this can unfold, low pressure cutting across the middle of the country, bringing that big slug of rain. You can see it up here. And this will continue. Could get more of scattered activity, sort of some breaks later this evening across these states like Kentucky, Tennessee, and surrounding states. But still could get an occasional storm or two. Some of this energy will try to make it into the southern Alps later tonight. And then we'll have to watch for some thunderstorms across the southeast tomorrow. And then the northeast, some much needed rain will move into the northeast later this afternoon. This is around 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock. Widespread rains across Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, western PA, starting to move into western New York. And we could actually have a line of thunderstorms later this evening moving across the Tug Hill Plateau, the Adirondacks, and then more so shifting to just a solid moderate to heavy rain across interior New England. But be aware of this much needed rain moving across these areas. This is much needed. Nothing too crazy about this. And we're going to wake up to a nice rainy start tomorrow morning. We need it. So it's hard to complain. And then this will race off, and then some cooler air will move in. So cool that we're starting to see some blue up here in eastern Canada. But rainfall between now and I would say about 7 p.m. Thursday. A lot of rain in Kentucky, areas of Tennessee, surrounding states. Some areas could get over 5 inches of rain. And then we look up into New England. Much needed rain up here too. So this is good to see. And then the south central U.S., what we're looking at, some strong to severe thunderstorms scattered in nature here in central New Mexico. Be aware of that. And some pop-up thunderstorms possible in the southern half of Texas today. It's gotten kind of dry in these areas. And then we could get a big plume of rain that kind of moves out of New Mexico into the western plains of Texas, but don't anticipate that to be a big deal. And a lot of this action will kind of move through, and some cooler air will sink down into the upper Midwest and the north central U.S. after being very warm. But weather-wise, not a whole lot to discuss. And then the western U.S., pretty quiet also. Cooler air has moved in. And then this is temperatures across the eastern U.S. You can see that cool air trying to move back in across the upper Midwest and the northern plains. And it'll be a warm one across the eastern U.S. again, but where you have that persistent rain and cloud cover, it'll kind of keep temperatures down. So not all that warm in general, but you're kind of moderating across the western U.S., but still a nice kind of fall-like day. So that's all I got, guys. We'll continue to figure out this situation in the tropics and this coastal low. This is definitely a tricky one. See if we got any new information. We don't. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day. And yeah, that's all I got. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.